We're here with Addison Township Supervisor Bruce Pearson for our second episode of our My Life session with Bruce. You've lived a very boring life. I know we don't have very much to talk about here. But what we started to talk about the last time, we started to get into your middle school years and your later school years. So why don't we pick it up right there? What middle school did you go to?
Well, I went to Anderson Middle School in Berkeley, and then Berkeley High School.
Berkeley High School.
Yes.
Were you into sports in Berkeley High School?
No, I
or any
wasn't
other?
into sports. I was in the band.
Really?
I marched at the Lions football games. I marched at the Thanksgiving parade.
What instrument?
Well, I played several instruments, but I played the guitar. I used to play with Marshall Crenshaw in Berkeley,
Really?
who is kind of a famous person now, but he used to play my Fender Stratocaster. I had a 1965 Fender Stratocaster, and that was a very popular guitar, and even more popular now.
Did you keep in touch with him?
Yes, I talked to him several years ago when I sold my Fender Stratocaster.
Really?
I talked to him. He lives in Woodstock, New York. And so anyways, and I played the sousaphone in the marching
really?
band. That's what my
You like big horns.
Yes, I played the sousaphone.
Wow.
So,
When did you start thinking about college?
my parents always,
Were you a good student in high school?
well, I spent more time at the principal's office than I did in the classroom. I had a sense of humor that maybe some of the teachers didn't appreciate. But I remember one time I had my motorcycle and I had just gotten it, and
This is when you were in high school. You got a
when I was
motorcycle.
in high school, yes, I had a motorcycle. And one time I was racing down Woodward, and then I ended up racing on Cotopa. It was an early morning. There was no traffic, and my buddy was on the back, and I was showing him how fast the motorcycle was going. And he goes, "Hey, look, behind us, there's police are going somewhere." And he says, "We don't have anything to do today. Let's see where they're going. You know, it might be exciting." And I said, "Okay." And so then we looked up ahead, and there were Southfield policemen, Royal Oak policemen, Berkeley policemen, Beverly Hills policemen. And anyway, so I pulled over to the shoulder, and lo and behold, they all ended up next to me. And my buddy said, "I think they're chasing us." And so I didn't know, but anyways, I got a ticket. They were very nice to me. Well, I remember in the middle of class, I had to climb out the window, and the teacher said, "Where are you going?" I said, I got an appointment with the judge. So I ran up, and the judge in Berkeley was very easy on me. I paid a $25 ticket, but then I climbed back through the window in class, and I said, "I got it all taken care of now." But and that's how I kind of got into police work, because the last ticket I got was on Woodward and Updike by the Bloomfield Township Police, because for some reason they said I had to keep two wheels of my motorcycle on the ground at all times. And so one day I asked the police, I said, you know, "How do I get out of all these tickets?" And they said, "Well, you either have to slow down or you have to join us." So I told them, I said, "Well, I can't slow down." So that's when I graduated, I signed up at Wayne State University in police administration.
So,
and I was interested in law enforcement at that time.
Did you have a hard time talking your dad into letting you get a motorcycle?
My father never told me that he was a vagabond and traveled around the country on his motorcycle. I don't think my mother would allow him to tell us that, because they wanted us to, of course, go on to college and everything. And finally, when my brother was in the Vietnam War, my dad finally broke down because I kept bugging him that I wanted a motorcycle, not knowing that he had even had a motorcycle. And so I ended up, he allowed me to get a motorcycle, and then of course he got a motorcycle again. And so
right around that same time?
Yes, and then we both started riding motorcycle way before I had a driver's license. And
he started showing you things you never knew he knew.
Yes, and he never showed me the old pictures of him traveling around the country till later on. And then when I hit the road 2 days after I graduated high school, I went through 28 states, and I ended up in Sturgis. And South Dakota in 1971, I went to my first Sturgis. And when I was there, the newspaper reporters, and I have pictures of myself at Sturgis, showed up, and my buddy and I were 18 years old, and they did a little story on us, and I have the actual newspaper. And so I'm going back with the same bike, a 1971 Kawasaki 500 triple, and 2021, and I'm going back, and I'm going to see if the newspaper will put me on the front page again 50 years later with the same motorcycle. So,
Well, that'll be great. So you did not go into college immediately after high school?
no, I traveled around the country for 4 months, and then I did.
What caused you to do that? What was going through your mind? Just something you wanted to do?
Well, yeah, at that time it was an adventure. Easy Rider, the motorcycle movie had come out in 1969, and the Vietnam War was going on, and everybody was just saying,
Were you concerned about being drafted, or?
No, I wasn't. I would have signed up, but my brother was over there, and he said, finish your college and come in as an officer. Don't come in as try to get into officer's candidate. Well, by the time I finished school, the war had ended.
Yeah. Were your folks encouraging about you driving around the country like that?
No, they're worried. They don't want me traveling around the country. And that's another thing. I got my graduation money. I think it was about $600, and I traveled the whole country. I think it was like about 14,000 miles, and I did that on like 600. But I never paid for a campground. I always camp. I'd pull up to a farmer's field, and I'd knock on the door. Could I park? Or I'd park at a church. Down south, I always went to the churches and knocked on the door, and they would always let me camp behind their church or whatever. So I never paid for a campsite the whole time I traveled for 4 months. And I traveled all the way up the East Coast, all the way down to Florida, the whole Gulf, out to New Mexico, up Colorado, Montana, and then Wyoming, and came back through.
What was your most memorable experience during that time?
Oh boy. Well, I climbed Pikes Peak with my motorcycle.
Did you?
And back then it was all gravel. And with my motorcycle, it was a two-stroke bike, so I had to keep it wide open the whole way up. And so when I got up to the top, people were cheering because I had made it up. Because I don't know if you've ever climbed Pikes Peak. It's a very scary thing. There's no guardrails. It's gravel, and you're up 14,000 some feet.
Okay, so 4 months later, you're back home. What's going through your mind?
Well, that's when I started college at Wayne State
And
University.
so did this concept of police work re-enter your mind?
Oh,
or?
I started right off the get-go in police administration at Wayne State University, and I decided that was the career I wanted.
Okay.
And so I went 2 years till 1973 at Wayne State.
Okay. And I know there's more to this story, so don't go away. Back with Addison Township Supervisor Bruce Pearson. Completed 2 years at Wayne State.
Yes.
Then what happened?
Well, then I hopped on my motorcycle.
The bug came back.
Yeah, and I was spending a lot of time out in Colorado, and I used to stay out in the mountains of Colorado outside of Golden, where all the hippies this was a hippie era, and so I camped out with all the Volkswagen bugs and everything.
You were looking for your Rocky Mountain High.
Yes, and that's when John Denver was promoting Denver at Colorado at that time. And so anyways, I ended up in Minnesota. I had some relatives there, so I ended up in Minnesota, and so I ended up applying at the University of Minnesota, in criminology, and so I was accepted, and I went to school at the University of Minnesota for a year. And then I ended up back out in Colorado again, because I loved Colorado. Actually, I had my first job offer as a police officer in Leadville, Colorado. But when I found out what they were paying, and but they did tell me, though, that even though the pay wasn't high, that I was entitled to all the roadkill, and which would supplement my meals, I guess. But I really didn't know a whole lot about elk and everything at that time, so I didn't think that was a real advantage to me, because I didn't know how to, carve up roadkill at that time. So anyways, I decided, well, I'd go back. I had signed up at Metro University in Denver there, but anyways, I ended up going back to the University of Minnesota at that time. But then they said I wasn't a resident, because I had said I was a resident in Colorado. So then I ran and I applied at Michigan State University in the criminal justice program, and so they said I wasn't a resident of Michigan. But then I had a hearing, and it ended up that the hearing officer asked where my draft status was, and so my draft status was Royal Oak, Michigan, so I was allowed to go to Michigan State University. And so then I went to Michigan State University, and I graduated in 1975 with a criminal justice degree at Michigan State University.
So what was the next step in your life?
Well, then I went, I did a special study at the University of London.
How did you get, how did that come about?
Well, that was through Michigan State University, but it was a program with the Senator Gaylord Nelson from the state of Wisconsin, and I was over there with the American ambassador, Elliot Richardson, and also, I'm trying to think, it was McGovern's campaign manager. And so I went over, and I got a carte blanche introduction to all the justices in England, because I was doing a study on the juvenile system, how in England the whole juvenile criminal justice system was turned over to the social services. In 1969 it was a white paper, and it basically turned over all the juvenile criminal actions over to the social service system. And at that time there was a big push in this country to do the same thing. They said that the juveniles didn't belong in the criminal justice system, they belonged in the social services. Well, I did a paper there, and I was allowed to go see the justices all through London, and I did a paper on that. And basically it ended up that it was a failure in England as far as turning everything over to the social services, because I used to ride with the police officers, and like they would explain to me in England, when they caught the kids doing some criminal activity, they turned them to social services, and before they made it back to their city to start patrolling, the kids were already back, and nothing was being accomplished. It was an overloaded system. So anyways, that's how I ended up in England. And then I had relatives there, and then I traveled all of Europe on a motorcycle with the pup tent.
So that's kind of what made it possible for you to start the motorcycle journey over there, huh?
Yes, and then I traveled all of the countries that I was allowed to, because you have to remember that was still communist at that time.
Yeah.
And the communist countries didn't allow you in, so I traveled all of the free Europe at that time. And then I ended up coming back on an immigrant ship.
Now, you mentioned to me off the set that you visited some of the sites of the Holocaust.
Yes.
Why don't you talk a little bit about that and some of your feelings? And
well, I was very interested. I'm a history buff, and so of course I went to all of the battlefields and everything through Europe. That was one of my main things. And Anne Frank's home in the Netherlands. And I also went to Anne Frank's, the prison camp this year, that Bergen-Belsen. And I was very interested in the Holocaust, that as a historical standpoint. and then I also went to Dachau, which is right outside of Munich, Germany. And I was very fascinated that this was allowed to happen. And people always say, if you don't remember these things, you're destined to repeat history. So I've also been to the Holocaust museums in West Bloomfield and in Washington, D.C. And I just, in my own personal mind, I think people need to remember these things so that they never happen again.
Sure.
And so I was always interested because I had many relatives that had fought in the wars.
Would you say that visiting those places probably was the most memorable part of your traveling through Europe?
They made the most impression on me. Yes. And when I came back on the immigrant ship, I wondered why so many people wanted to come to the United States. And so I was on the ship for a couple of weeks coming back, and I got to talk to people from all over the world. Stephanie Batory was an old not British, but a Polish liner that also took the children during the Battle of Britain, the orphans, and took them to Australia. That was one of the ships, and it also fought it was in the British ports.
I sense you weren't living in luxury while you were on this journey.
No, this was not a real luxury liner, believe me. And everybody had all of their belongings that they were coming to the United States with in the hull there. So, I mean, everybody was coming to live in here. So I got to talking to an awful lot of people, and I realized, that the United States was why people were coming here, because it was a special place, and everybody was willing to do it and wait in line to get here to immigrate, either to Canada first and then to the United States. But they were willing to wait in line and become legal residents of our country and eventually citizens. And I sometimes say, I've given speeches at the Boy Scouts and I say, it's important to know why there's some conflict sometimes in immigration in this country, because there are people who are willing to wait and do it the legal way and the right way, and it's not fair to them that some people come in the illegal way ahead of them while they're still waiting. Sure. So, I mean, there's a lot of reasons. This immigration thing is very important. We should be welcoming people that are wanting to come into this country legally.
Yeah. Unfortunately, there are things happening in other parts of the world that kind of force the issue a little more than it should be.
That's correct. And we've always had a remedy for that.
Yeah. We need to take another break. We'll be right back with Bruce Pearson.
Do you love local sports? Whether it's Oxford High School or Parks and Rec, you can buy copies of each game. To purchase your copy, call us at 248-628-9658 or give us an email at manager@occtv.org or talk to us at the next game. Hopefully we'll see you there.
Back with Addison Township Supervisor Bruce Pearson. You finished up your travels in Europe. You came back over on the immigrant ship. What was your next move after that?
Well, then I applied for a job at Pontiac Township. Which
so now it's time to get a real job.
A real job, and I got the job there. And I became a police officer in Pontiac Township. And I stayed there for about 3.5 years, and then Sheriff Spreen offered a position for officers who had experience and a college degree. And he immediately put us to top pay, and so I jumped over to the Sheriff's Department in 1979.
And how many years did you spend in the Oakland County Sheriff's?
I retired there 29 years.
That was Oakland County Sheriff's.
Oakland County Sheriff's Department. I retired there in 2008, the same time that I decided to run for Township Supervisor.
So you spent a lot of years on the Sheriff's Department.
Yeah, Sheriff's and Pontiac Township.
What was one of your most memorable moments on the Sheriff's Department, would you say?
Oh, I have a wound here that I've had several operations on from a Molotov cocktail that, in Rochester there, 3 boys had started setting houses on fire with Molotov cocktails in downtown in Rochester, and make the story short, I ended up tackling and convicting 2 of them, and one of the bombs went off in my hand there, and so I had several operations on my hand, and I couldn't stay away from work. And so my hand was all bandaged up, and of course I could have stayed home because it was work related and I could have taken a lot of time off, but I kept begging the sheriff at that time, could I come back to work? And that was Sheriff Nichols at that time, and finally he let me come back, but I had to be the ride double in a car with somebody, and he let me come back with my hands still wrapped up, and because I just couldn't stay home, you know, it just wasn't me. So those guys ended up going to prison, but that was one of my...
Did you get married at this? Were you married during those years?
No, not at that time, no.
Not during while you were Oakland County Sheriff?
Yes, I was. Yes,
okay.
When I was a sheriff, yes.
Okay, and did you have your son Cody during that time?
Yes, Cody was born in 2000. My son was born unable to walk, and so I ended up taking control of my son, and I've been to the Shriners Hospital in Chicago many times. I've been to the University of Michigan many times.
You and your wife got a divorce?
Yes, and it was over my son seeking medical treatment.
Sure.
I believed in medical treatment, and so I was the one that was allowed to take control of him.
Yeah. Yeah, I only bring this up because any of us who've been around the township meetings and stuff are very familiar with Cody because he's always with you. He's a common sight at these meetings. He's very friendly, and everybody's gotten to know him. So
everybody knows Cody.
Yeah, indeed.
Cody can walk up to anybody and talk to anybody.
Sure.
He's just a very happy-go-lucky child, and he is walking a little bit now. He walks. He's at Oxford High School, and he uses the walker all through school. And I know it's very hard for him, but like he says, you know, he'll do it.
Yeah.
He'll get through it,
Yeah.
and you know, I mean, you know, and it's very hard for peer pressure walking around with a walker.
Yeah.
But he does.
He seems to be doing
well.
okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So, what turned the light on about getting into politics?
Well, when my son was just a young man, and I had many years on, 30-some years on as a police officer, I finally told myself, my son needs me more than I need to be pulling strange cars over at midnight. And so I was very grateful that the whole community had helped me raise my son. I needed a lot of help. I needed help getting him on and off the school bus. I needed help when I had to work overtime or something. There were always people in the, it's like I said, it takes a whole village to raise a child, and the whole village came to me. And I'm very grateful to Louie's Restaurant, Janet and Louie. They helped me raise my son. They were always there for my son. Diane Martell is the mother of my deputy supervisor, Jamie Martell. She was Cody's nanny, and she helped me everywhere. She was terrific. So I owed it to the community. And when I decided to run for township supervisor, I wasn't running for any other issue. I was running because I thought that I could do some good things in the community, and I was very grateful to the community for helping me when I needed help. So when I ran for township supervisor, it was to be the township supervisor, not for stepping stones to go to other appointments or other elections. It was to be the best township supervisor I could be to help out my community because they did so much for me.
Was that first race a tough one? Did you have tough competition there? Or?
Yes, but I wasn't running against another person. Personally, I didn't look at it that way. I looked at it that I gave the community many ideas that I had that I would like to do in the future. And I think the community just liked my ideas, and so that's why I was successful in the election. And now I'm in my 3rd term, and a lot of people have asked me to stay on for a 4th term, and that is to be determined.
Well, of course, we're all getting older. There's no way we can fight that. But the fact of the matter is, you love what you do.
You know, I've been very fortunate. Every job I've had, I absolutely loved. I absolutely wanted to go to work every day. I mean, and that's a rare thing in this world, because a lot of people take jobs that they're not happy with or they don't like. They just look at the money. I don't look at the money. I look at the job. The job I love. You know, I love the police work, and I love the work I'm doing right now. Those are just things that I just love going to work.
And obviously, you don't get along with anybody in Addison, right?
No, well, I like all my residents in Addison Township. Like I said, my job is to fight for them for their daily lives. This means the most to them. Is I'm the first line of defense. When something, if you have a flood that's going down your street or whatever, you don't call the state or whatever. You come to your township supervisor first and say, "Can you help me?" And I have the connections through the, you know, being able to know who to call at the road commission or at the county or at the state level. I know how to get a hold of the people who can fix the problem.
Yeah. And you know, all these experiences that you've had, all these life experiences, I mean, yeah, sure, you got a college degree and you were in the police, Oakland County Sheriff's for a long time. But all traveling around the world to these different sites, viewing these different countries, different societies, how they do things, that's had to be of some help to you.
It really was. You know, I realize in some places, you know, you don't have you're not treated equally. Here in the United States, you're treated equally. And one of my heroes is Brooks Patterson. Brooks Patterson is a guy that I always say he trained me. Even though I was just a deputy, I watched how he ran the county over there. I'm very grateful how terrific of a job he's done for the citizens of Oakland County, and how we're not in debt here. I mean, that's the way it's supposed to be. Too bad everybody else isn't of the same mindset. But Brooks Patterson taught me a lot, whether he knows it or not. And so when I came into office, I had the same ideas, the same policy that to serve the community. Brooks has never left Oakland County. He stayed here and served us all these years. And like I said, now that I'm now that I'm the township supervisor, that's the only job that I want to do right now. That's it. I'm going to be the township supervisor and the best I can be. And then when I'm done, I'm done.
Yeah. Well, I always like to ask my guests, before we conclude our interviews, if you look back on your life, is there anything that you would change?
No, I don't think so. I say right now I'm having a perfectly good life, and I hope that I have been able to share that with other people. And I hope that when I'm done being the township supervisor, I hope that people will say, now there's a man that did a great job for us, and we appreciate it. And that's all I ever want, you know. That's all that I want, is just to make a difference, that everybody's life was a little better because I was there. That's all.
And I think they will. And CJ, if you're watching, I think you're right. Thanks for coming on board. We appreciate you being here, Bruce.
Thank you very much.
Bruce Pearson.
There's a lot of history to Oxford. Hidden around every corner, deep in every crack, and sometimes right in front of you, waiting to be discovered. If you just dig a little, you'll find the great history of our beautiful town. Welcome to Historic Oxford. Catch us anytime on YouTube. Go to Oxford Community Television YouTube.